Hey guys, so how are we going to make this animation? Well, we are going to start off with the end result actually, because we can make almost everything from just this map. How do we create this? Well, there is a free add-on called GIS. I will also show you where you can download it and all that stuff. But yeah, we get all our data from there. So essentially this is just a Google satellite data, and then we also import a NASA high detail data on top of it, which is also, yeah, they're both here. So very cool. From that we can create, our wireframe. Here we just animate our wireframe. The only thing we need to do to animate it from flat to this depth detail is literally just go in your displacement map and put it to 0 and to 1. That's it. And then we have this animation where, yeah, it kind of gets scanned, right? We have this little scanner here, and we go from the wireframe all the way to a very realistic map. And that takes a little bit more time. It's quite easy as well. There are just two cubes that we have here, here and here. They both have a boolean and they are attached to a empty. But yeah, when I say it like this, it sounds quite hard. It's not that hard. I'm trying to explain it a very easy step by step. And if you're ever stuck, just comment down below. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is we want to download this add-on. You can get the link in the description below, and you can just click on clone or download. I like to download the zip folder, and then when you're in Blender, the only thing you have to do is go into edit mode, preferences, go into add-ons, click on install, look for your add-on, which is Blender GIS master, install add-on from file. Now it will end up in here. If it doesn't, you could also try to type GIS, then it will also end up here. You can just click on it and make sure you save preferences. If I now click this away, you can see that we have a new option here, and we can create a web geodata from a base map. Don't do this yet, because if I click on OK now, we can see that we have an error. Please define a valid cache folder path. If you go into GIS, you can go here into preferences. This opens up preferences again, and here you can see base maps cache folder. So now just create a folder. Mine is called scan cache. Accept it. Now you can save it again, or if you have autosave on, you don't have to do that. And now if you start to create a web geodata base map, source is Google, layer will be satellite, you can click on OK, and now you can see a top view of the world. So this is essentially Google Maps, and you can just zoom in and zoom out wherever you want. I like to have a little bit of depth in there, so I would like to go near a mountain. Here in Italy, seems to be a nice place. Be wary that if you go too high in the world map, you cannot get any depth data, and we do want that in this case. I'm not sure why, but the NASA doesn't have it yet from there. So So let me grab a place where there are not a lot of houses. Here, this seems quite cool. So if I want to accept this, you click on E, let's just extrusion, you click on E. And here is our plane. Very, very cool. So you can see this plane already has materials. So if we change this to our shade editor, you can see that it's just a texture on top of it. Right, it's just a texture. We have a UV map, we have a texture, and that is essentially this. Now, if you go to GIS and click on web data, get the SRTM, which is the NASA depth map. Click on it, and now it will start collecting all of that data. So here we have our depth data. Very, very cool. One thing I want to change is the specularity and the roughness. I don't think any mountain is as shiny as this. So let's go into our material shading and change this to 0.1, and the roughness I will do to 0.8. This already seems way better. So I want to change this and make it a little bit more detailed, and how you do that is you go to modifiers. We're gonna grab another subdivision surface, and if you look good, there is already a subdivision surface created and also a displacement map. we're going to put the new subdivision surface above the displacement map, and we can create a little bit of an extra subdivisions. So what you can see now is we get some more geometry, so it will work a little bit better, but it is very blocky. So how do we change this? You just go here in your texture, and this is the texture essentially from this map. Go into the sampling and make sure the interpolation is on. And this will get rid of all of that blocky detail. Okay, so this is the base material for the end result. We're going to duplicate this. And from this duplicate, we're only going to delete the second subdivision that we have. So we're also going to rename this, and this is going to be the wireframe. Very cool. And for the wireframe, we also want a wireframe modifier. So add modifier, and we're going to add the wireframe. If we hide off the other one, you can see that this wireframe modifier just a bunch of dots right now. If we make the wireframe a bit bigger, then those dots will get more into lines. So it kind of caps at 1 meter, but you can also go in here and just type whatever you want. So I'm gonna go to 4, and this looks already way better. I do think there are a little bit too many squares, so I can just lower this subdivision surface a little bit. Very, very cool. So here you can change the thickness, and here you can change the amount of squares that you have. But as you can see, this still has the same material as this other one, right? So I want to also create a new material for this. Select it, click on this tool here, and that just duplicates this material. And we're gonna rename this to emission or emission wireframe. I'm going to delete the principal shader and all of this other stuff and create a emission node. Bam, emission goes into the surface, and here we have a nice emission. You can change the color here and the strength, and that does quite a lot. But the nice thing that Eevee also has is if you go here into your render settings, you can also make sure that your emissions bloom, and this gives a really, really cool effect. So you can change the threshold here, the radius that it blooms, and all of that stuff can be done right here. Very, very cool. So personally, I think I would still make this a little bit smaller, and then the thickness a little bit bigger. I'm happy with this result. So let's say this is the result that we want. Now we want to create from this wireframe this map. How do we do that? Well, it's actually not too hard. If we go into our side view, so let's make sure we go a bit closer, yes, and add a cube. Because the scale is all a little bit messed up, you need to scale like this cube a little bit around, and sometimes moving the camera also creates some issues because yeah, it's just very small. You could do multiple things. I'm just gonna keep it at this for right now, but you could scale up or down the whole scene, and that would also work great. But the first thing that we need to do here is make sure we scale up this cube so everything fits inside, and then I also want to move it to the side here and make sure it's perfectly on the line of the z-axis. Around here would be great. Now I'm going to duplicate this cube and move it to the y-axis, and I want to match it up so it's just laying against the other one. Like this. Very, very cool. Now as last, we add an empty. Make sure you scale it up, and that's just so you can see it. Here it is. And we're gonna select these two cubes, then the empty as last, and click on Ctrl P to set parent to object. Very cool. So now if I move this empty, both of these cubes will move with it. That's the only reason why we do it. It's very hard for us to see our model right now, right? Because these cubes are in front. If we actually select the cube, go here into our object, change the viewport display from textured to wire, and the other one as well. Now we can still see and select our cubes, but it's just wires, so we can just work on them. Very, very cool. Okay, so why do we do this? Well, if we select our map, which is just the export Google set dot whatever it is, go in here into your modifiers, here, click on Boolean, and now you can select a cube. So let's select this one. So now everything which is inside this cube will be Booleaned off. You can see that the cube cuts off everything which is inside. I missed a little piece, so I'm gonna select both of these cubes and just scale them around the x-axis a little bit, just so I make sure I have everything. Cool. So now if I move this empty around the y-axis, you can see that everything will be cut off or will be shown. Very, very cool. And we're gonna do the same for the wireframe. The only thing is, with the wireframe, we're going to create a boolean, but we're gonna select the other cube, so this one. And now you can see that we have a clear separation between the realistic world and the wireframe. Very, very cool. So now we have a very clear separation between our wireframe and our realistic world. So there's only one thing missing, and that is that little scanner plane here. What we're gonna do is we're just gonna create a plane, make sure we're on the top view. I'm gonna scale it to our scene. Here we can look at our size. So I want to make sure it is around the same size as our map. Just make sure it's a little bit smaller, okay? And on the other side, we of course also need to match it up. GX. Very, very cool. Now I want to move it around the y-axis and make sure it just covers this realistic part. Around here seems good, and I'm gonna move it around the z-axis up here. Cool. So I wanted to move with this empty, so I'm just gonna select it, then shift select the empty, Ctrl P, and also set this parent to the object. So if I move this empty around, also this nice little scanner will be moved with it. So now we need a material with this plane. We're just gonna select our emission, then click on the 2 to duplicate it, and we're just gonna, instead of emission wireframe, we'll just call it emission scan. This is a little bit too bright, so I'm just gonna bring my strength a little bit down, maybe to 10. So how do we create a nice gradient in here? Well, it's actually not too hard. We can just grab a gradient texture here, and that already should do the work. But with me, I have this little problem that it goes the wrong side, right? It doesn't go from black to blue here. It actually goes from black to blue, like around the x-axis. If you also have this problem, you only have to add a texture coordinate node and a mapping node in here. I'll put the generated into the vector. Make sure the mapping node is at a texture, and then this vector goes into this vector. And nothing really changed, but now if we rotate the z-axis 90 degrees, you can see that we have a gradient going from right to left, or whatever you want. So this gradient is kinda good, right? But I want it a little bit more subtle. I want the fall off to be a bit more smooth. So let's grab a color ramp in here, and now we can put this linear to ease, which makes it a little bit more smooth, and we can move these values a bit around. So around here will be cool for me. Very, very nice. The thing is, I do not really want it to be black. I want it to be transparent. So we want to add a transparent shader in here, and we're gonna mix this with the emission. So we're gonna use a mix shader. Now we're going to use this gradient texture actually as a mask. So I'm gonna put this, instead of in the strength, I'm gonna put this into the vec value of the mix shader. You can see that nothing really happens. And this is because we have to go here into our material section, And instead of blend mode opaque, we need to change the blend mode to blend mode alpha blend. And now we can see that something is really happening. Okay, so it is the wrong way around, so I'm gonna just change these two shaders. And now it seems to be okay. You can still play around with these values if you would like to, but that is up to you. So now, if I move this around, you can see that everything moves very nicely and we get this nice scanning result. There is one problem though. Our little scanner here actually does not lay on top of our model. So how do we do that? Well, let's go into this solid viewport shading first. We want to project this model on top of this model here. But it does not have enough geometry. So we're going to add a lot of geometry in here. So just click on Ctrl R and just move your scroll wheel a little bit up. And then also here, I will do it like once. We can always add a subdivision surface in here and put it to simple. That would also work. But the next step will be add modifier, and we're going to add our shrink wrap modifier. Bam. Now we can select on which model we want to wrap this. So I'm going to select our map. Very cool. So now it just does, the mode is nearest surface point. And that, because we have like higher details, it will just take the nearest one, and that is not really the result that we want. So I'm actually gonna select this and I'm gonna move it to project. I want to project this on top of this one. So how this works is it like projects the model on top of the other model from the normals. But if we look at the normals here, face orientation, they are all pointed upwards. So if this is pointed upwards, it will see nothing, right? We can change these normals, or what you can also do is, instead of the direction positive, we can move it to negative. And now it will go on the other side of the normals, right? And this is very cool. If you go here into your material, you can see that it works very well. We just need to put the offset a little bit off. So we're gonna move it up so it doesn't intersect with the other one. Very cool. So now, make sure it does never intersect. Here it still does. And that is, I think, mostly because I need to put this model a little bit up. Yeah, that seems to work. Here. And here we have a great result. Very, very cool. So now we have everything we need to create our animation. So, first thing that we want is, we only want to see the wireframe, right? And also, this wireframe should be totally flat. If you put the strength of this at 0, you can see that it is nice and flat. So let's grab a new editor type in here, and it's going to be the timeline. So at frame 1, I want this here to be 0. Insert keyframe. Then around frame 20, I want it to be 1. Insert keyframe. So now from 0 to 1, we have a nice translation from flat until this detail. So now, from frame 30, I want to start moving this empty. So I'm going to frame 30 and click on E, location. Make sure you only select the empty. Around frame 90 or 80, I want this to end. So around here. E, location. So now what will happen is, if we just play this for right now, you can see that it gets created, and then we get a nice scanning animation, and here we have our result. So I only want this animation to go on till like 100 frames, so the end is going to be 100. And yes, so there's one thing wrong here, and that is this little scanner just keeps going on, and we do not want that. I do not want it here in the beginning anyways. I only want it to show when it is really scanning, when it's really scanning the map on it. So we're going to search for the first frame where it should act. So let's go one frame further. Here it seems very good. So in this frame, I want this to be visible, right? But how do we animate this? If you go into your material, we're just gonna duplicate this mix shader and this transparent shader. Ctrl C, Ctrl V, move them to the side. This surface goes into this shader, and then shader goes into the surface. And what we can do here is, when it's all the way at 0, it will not be shown. When it's all the way at 1, we just show our whole material, right? So this frame is the frame that we want to show. Right click on this fact value, insert keyframe. Go 1 frame back where it is wrong. Click on the fact, make sure it's 0 because we do not want to see it. Right click and insert keyframe. So what happens here is, in all these frames before, you will not see it. And then when it is supposed to act, we get it because our fact value will be 1. And then it moves over here. And then this should be the last frame that should be working. So I'm going to create another keyframe at 1. And then the next keyframe should be fact 0. And make sure you insert that keyframe as well. And now it will be hidden. So when you play it, you can see it gets created. And then bam, ready. If you want to render this, you can see that we do not have any lighting in here. So I do highly advise you go here into world, create an environment texture, and put an HDRI in here. So just click on open, put an HDRI in here. The HDRI that I'll be using, which is Cloud Layers, you can get for free on my website. So you can just click down below and open image. Here we have a nice scene. I do personally want to lower the strength to maybe 0.4 or 0.5. And I do not really want to see my HDRI. So if you go in here, in your render settings, go into film, you can make it transparent. And what I would also like to do is create a light, which is going to be the sun. And with the sun, I like to rotate it a bit so we can create some more shadows. And you can of course go into here, into the object data of the sun, and change the strength a little bit. I hope you guys learned from this. Please like, subscribe, it really helps me out. And yeah, I see you guys in the next one. Peace.